It's figuring out your North Star and aiming towards that. And you have all the skills and all the tools within you and now outside of you to access to do whatever you desire to do and to change the world and make it a better place.
Welcome to the Money Skills for Therapists podcast, where we answer this question: how can therapists and health practitioners go from money shame and confusion to feeling calm and confident about their finances and get money really working for them in both their private practice and their lives? I'm your host, Linzy Bonham, therapist turned money coach and creator of the course Money Skills for Therapists. Hello, and welcome back to the podcast. Today's guest is Amity Cooper. Amity is a seasoned entrepreneur with decades of experience before becoming a trained mental health professional, and she's also an entrepreneurial coach. And today, Amity and I talk about tech in therapy. We dig into what are the technologies that are available to therapists. We talk about discerning which techs you want to use, but ultimately the fact that there probably is a technical solution to most problems that you're having in your therapy practice. And we end up having a little bit of a discussion too about techno optimism. Is tech good for us? Is it bad for us? Something that's definitely on my mind as I'm a parent, thinking about my son's development and his social development, and what does technology mean for us in general as humans in the world? Interesting conversation there with Amity as somebody who is very much in this space. And ultimately, we ended up talking about the importance of therapists being involved in these tech conversations. You know, these tools and these apps, they are happening no matter what. And we often underestimate our expertise that we have to bring to the table when it comes to the development of these kinds of tools. Here is my conversation with Amity Cooper. So Amity, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me here. I'm really excited about our conversation.
Yeah, me too. You are bringing a topic today that is a topic I do not know a ton about, which is we're planning to have a chat about technology in therapy. So I wanted to start with kind of a toe dip question as we get in, is like, for folks in private practice, therapists and health practitioners, what type of tech should they be thinking about and should they have in their private practices?
Oh, I love this question. And let me just say that for many of us, it's going to be different. We have different type of practices. We have our different skill sets that bring to bear on any choice. Whatever technology we bring into our practices, it has to fit us first. And because they're tools, they're not running the show. We are. So I just have to give that disclaimer to it because there is a plethora of softwares and actual physical tools that we can apply and utilize in our everyday life, not I'm wearing multiple hats. There's the hat that we put on to be the business owner, and we think about all of the different software programs that run our back offices seamlessly. We can use AI to kingdom come if we want for all the different tasks that make the boring things less boring because we don't have to think about them that much anymore with these AI agents. It's generative AI that I'm speaking about. So we have all of these integrations that are taking place where software is being able to talk to each other. So different software platforms are now interconnected and entwined so that we as the human being are just pushing a button and following through our particular workflow process, but we have the software and the tools to produce that 24/7. So I hope that sort of rounds that one component out. When you start to put on your clinical hat of work, there are about three to four things that I see on the horizon that are already being used, but we're slow to adopt in this industry. First and foremost, let me say what the lowest hanging fruit is: video. I mean, we have multiple new generations of video and access to using social media and all of these video telehealth services at large. We have really grown in the last 5 years.
Mhm.
When we look back and we couldn't even imagine, we didn't even know what the word Zoom was in 2020, and look at us now. I mean, this is incredible. We're on Squadcast and there's numerous different products available for us. So I want to stress to the clinician out there who is really comfortable in their therapy seat
Mhm.
to explore and sort of expand, because telehealth is here and you can run and you can reach people at scale
Yeah.
with video services. So I think this is a good reminder.
Yeah.
Like, we can take it to the next level, but that next level is going to be determined based on what you want and what you need
Right.
in your practice.
Right.
Okay. So then the next sort of cluster of tools that I see are these interactions with wearables. I'm wearing my Aura Ring,
Right.
okay? So this is a sensor-based accessory, and it can be from your glasses to your Aura Ring to the fabric you wear. The sensor tools that are available at our fingertips and specifically through our smartphone
Mhm.
is a game changer, because now we have diagnostic. We get real-time biofeedback
Hmm.
on a particular therapist and a client's homeostasis. We can monitor those in real time. Now, oh, the other thing I couldn't remember what it was. It's called Muse. They look like Wonder Woman headbands,
Mhm.
and you put them on and it gives you
Yeah.
biofeedback
Yeah.
on your meditation.
Yes.
Okay. Now you can take that data on a professional level and you can track somebody's progress on their mindfulness practice.
Yes.
So I think there's all these ways in which digital therapeutics are infiltrating and coming into the therapy room in a way that really adds value and interest and care and attention
Mm.
that clinicians, we've been limited. We've been limited by what we observe.
Yes.
We listen to the intonation, we listen to the voice, we can look at affect. We see if somebody's depressed or anxious or manic, whatever that may be. But now we have the data to back it and to validate it in a
Right.
way that we've never had before. So that is an exciting
Yeah.
entry point
Yes. Yes.
into these exponential
Right.
technologies.
And
And I'm seeing that it's an economical step up
yes.
for you as a clinician if you are unsure about what you should be trying out.
Because as I think about the folks who I work with in Money Skills for Therapists, and probably many of the folks who listen to this podcast, those first two pieces of tech are almost just part of the air we breathe right now, right? Like your clinic management
Mm,
system, be it like Jane or Simple Practice or Therapy Notes, there's many, many out there. They're so helpful and they
mhm,
automate so many things that could be a total pain in the
mhm.
butt. And I think my observation is most therapists are using something like that. There's still folks who are not into it. There's still folks who want to do more of like the handwritten notes. And those are folks who I find tend to either have low confidence with technology, like they're like, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to learn that. But also folks who
If
have low
it's not
trust in
broken, don't
technology.
fix it, right?
Yes.
It's
Yes.
just this is my system
Yeah.
and I'm good with that.
Yes.
Don't
Yes.
fix it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I do find the default is that most folks are using a tool like that. And then the second type of tool you mentioned, the video, as you say, has like exploded onto the scene. I remember offering Zoom sessions as a backup if folks couldn't make sessions. And this would have been in 2018. And that was
Mhm.
like weird. Like that was a very strange, unusual thing to be doing. And I remember meeting a therapist who worked only online in 2018 and being like, what do you mean? Like
Who
you
are
only
you?
see them on the internet. It was so, so strange. And like little did I know that 2 years later, that would be all of us. That would be everybody for so much time. So yeah, so that video piece certainly has become also quite ubiquitous. Most folks at least used it for a while with their clients, if they're not still doing some of that now. But this third piece you're talking about, this is new. This is
This is
something that, yeah, like I
this
stopped
is
practicing therapy. So I feel like I left the therapy space before this was even remotely
oh,
around,
yeah.
which
Oh,
is,
yeah.
yeah, this biofeedback, biomonitoring. And you're talking about Muse. Actually, somebody that I went to high school with was part of the Muse development team.
Who is
Yeah, isn't that
that?
interesting? Yeah.
Ooh, yeah.
Yes, but this information, because what I'm hearing you say is before we've had to rely on our clients' self-reports of like, how
Mhm.
anxious were you this week? How is your sleep? But now there's actually information that they can choose to have tracked that actually creates data. We're not
Yes,
just basing on somebody's self-report and their impression of how things went, which might
yes.
vary because we all are very subjective,
It's all subjective,
very
right? We
subjective.
don't know. We
Um,
don't know. But now we have the backup,
yeah.
we have data, we have the information, we have the algorithms, we have everything. And there's a couple of new tools just off the cuff I'm thinking. One, there's a lot of new services, SaaS services out there for note taking. So it's transcription services, things like that, that are specifically applicable to our industry. So that's something. If note taking is just the thing you hate to do,
Mhm.
try this out. I mean, just the podcast world
Mhm.
has exploded. And you think about how you're creating all of this content. Now you can record or video record, you could get permission from your clients and you can do transcription services. Now, that is a tricky situation. That's not going to be for everybody.
Mhm.
And of course, there are all ethical rules and regulations for this. And I'm not saying just go out there willy
Yeah.
nilly
Yeah.
doing this, but if this is a curiosity for you,
Mhm.
there's a tool for that.
Yes. Right.
You know?
Yes.
I think that's what I think we both need to stress. There's a tool for that.
Yeah.
Way There's a way to make your life simpler
Mhm. Yeah.
or and easier and more efficient, so you're not constantly on top of these things.
Yeah.
These things are supposed to alleviate
Yes.
the busyness so that you can be with your clients
Mhm.
up close and personal and meet a need the way you wanna be.
Mhm.
So, I think that's the
Yes.
disclaimer for
Yes.
all of
Sure. Yes. Yeah, there are
right?
options out there. It's not for everybody, but, like, the notes is a great example. Like, I was just chatting with a student in my course this morning about how she's having trouble getting to her notes and getting to the other administrative pieces of the business, and she's got, like, ADHD in the mix, which I find many, many folks who I work with in my course are women who've discovered at 40 that they're like, "Oh, shoot. I have ADHD. This explains so much about my life."
That's a whole 'nother
Yes.
topic,
Yeah.
right? I mean, diagnosis in adulthood, my
Yes.
goodness,
Yes.
right?
So,
Yeah.
like, where something like notes can become a massive stressor and hang over your head and make you feel very ineffective and just be this constant area that your inner critic is gonna tell you you're failing in your practice. There are
Mhm.
tools that can facilitate that, and so there are options, right? We don't
There are
necessarily
options,
have to do all the grunt work
right.
anymore, and if there's an area of real pain that's undermining your professional confidence, there might be an option for something to help to ease that.
Yes, I second
Yeah.
that. Absolutely. And this is what is so amazing about today, the world that we're living in. I'm a cautious optimist, okay? But I have to say, as an innovator, I'm entrepreneurial,
Mhm.
okay?
Yeah.
And that entrepreneurial mindset is
Yeah.
always scanning and looking for openings and
Right.
opportunities.
Yes.
And the world that we're in right now, we're unlimited in
Mhm.
our potential and our services. And this is why I feel so thrilled and purposeful about talking about exponential tech because it's disrupting our industry.
Mhm.
And we have a technological and clinical gap
Yeah.
in our world
Yes.
that we're facing. The world is speeding ahead, and all of these companies and technologies are advancing, and our industry is slow to catch up. And I want to bridge that digital divide.
Mhm.
And I encourage everybody that I talk to really look at this as just an amazing frontier to step into. And
Mhm.
to scan across the landscape and really take in the view because it's changing and we can be part of that conversation.
Right.
Traditionally, and I think you probably are aware of this, I mean, traditionally, the institutional powers that be really just have told us how it's going to be. They set
Mm.
the certifications,
Sure.
they set the course and
Sure.
the pace.
Yeah.
Well, technology doesn't work that way.
Mhm.
It is they have an idea and they figure it out, and it's a minimal viable product. So your job, I see this as our job as clinicians
Mm.
is that we have to be in alignment with all of these new tech companies because the digital therapeutic space is exploding.
Right.
And they're coming to us in arrears. They're coming after the fact, after the product has already been developed, and they go, "Oh, we should fact check this." This is a perfect case of hallucinations that AI has. When you start to input data into a large learning language
Mhm.
model,
Yeah.
okay? They're just pulling and taking in the data that's inputted into them, processing it, and regurgitating it back.
Right.
It's a problem response structure.
Okay.
And that's a loose description
Sure.
of it,
Okay.
right? I might not be perfect on that, just give me grace
Sure.
on that.
Sure.
So, but they have found with the studies is that there's
Mhm.
biases that are built in
Sure.
these
Of
algorithms.
course. Yeah.
My point is, how do you correct those? How do you change the way this algorithm
Mm.
regurgitates the information that it experiences? And that means that we have to have the experts,
Mhm.
the people that understand these nuances involved in the research and the
Right.
development.
Right. Yes.
So
Yes.
I think that's where I'm going. It's like
Yeah.
a responsibility here to be co-creators with this new tech.
Because the norm that I see more is that, as you say, they come to us later. They're like, hey, there's this thing. Is this good? Does this make sense? Because, yeah, there isn't the same sense of ethics in that world. That's not what they're there for. Whereas what I find with the therapy space, and I'm thinking specifically about the mental health therapy space, we can be so almost paralyzed by questions of ethics, right? We're like, is this
Oh,
okay? I don't
yeah.
know. Yeah, I see a lot of stuckness that can happen with us because we are so focused on being ethical. But what I'm hearing you say is basically we're getting left behind, right? All these
Yes.
technologies are being created. And if we're not in there being part of these conversations, like if we don't have a seat at the table, these technologies are going to
Yes.
happen anyways. And we're still going to be like beating our brows over whether it's okay to use a tool to
Yeah.
make this part of our practice a little bit easier and what all the
Exactly.
implications of that could possibly be. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. And then we're going to say it's not a sound product.
Yeah.
And that's our own fault.
Mm.
That is something that's the onus is on us
Mhm.
for that
Mhm.
because we were never part of the planning or the discussion or the integration.
Mhm.
And so it's a call out not only to us to step up into that role,
Yeah.
okay, as advocate, as innovator, okay, but it's also a call out to these digital companies whose purpose are two things. They want to make money,
Mhm.
but they also want to create and innovate and bring
Yes.
new tools to the world.
Yes.
So there is a back and forth, a titration between these things, but ultimately, we all want the same
Mm.
result. We want
Mm.
to advance humanity. We want to solve this mental health
Mhm.
crisis. And the tools that are available today
Mhm.
definitely help us at scale.
Mhm. I'm hearing you say that you're a reluctant optimist. Was that the phrase you used? I'm getting techno optimist vibes from you. I'm gonna have to say.
Thanks.
Yeah, I feel like you might be more than a little bit reluctantly optimist because I'm probably more on the techno critic side of these discussions. And I'm doing a lot of active thinking right now about these things because I also have a child who's 5.
Yes.
So it's like, what do these technologies mean for social development, brain development? If we're engaging in these
Mhm.
technologies, what are we not doing? I have a lot of these questions, and I'm a big fan of Cal Newport, who is kind of like
Right.
somewhere in the centrist. He's a centrist in all ways, but certainly has techno criticisms. And I'm reading Jonathan Haidt's The Anxious Generation right now, which is pure techno
Oh, I've heard of
criticism. Like he's
that. Yeah.
not at all optimistic or positive about the impacts on mental health of technology. So this is kind of refreshing to hear you have so much hope around this as a therapist who understands technology, because I think a lot of folks would actually make the argument that in many ways technology has created a mental health crisis, right? Has made us more lonely and isolated and made us think that we're connecting with people, but we're actually more disconnected. I am curious. We were not planning to talk about this, but I'm just so
I
curious as somebody who's in this world. What is
yeah.
your response to that kind of?
Okay,
Yeah,
I'm gonna go all the way back to the Gutenberg Bible and the printing press,
right. Let's do it.
okay? I
Yes.
I I look at the whole discussion around technology is,
Mhm.
are we a lemming or not? Like
Mhm.
this fear, a Luddite, right?
Right. A
A
Luddite.
Luddite
Yeah.
had an uprising
Mhm.
because there was all this new tools
Mhm.
and advancements in manufacturing
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
development, right?
Yes.
In factories.
Yes.
And they fought it because it was against what they knew.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now I look and then I go back and I think about the development of the Gutenberg Bible.
Mhm.
And I think about the majority of society at that time was illiterate. And then all of a sudden, you have a book that is able to share life
Mm.
and humanize the experience that we're all having individually, and
Mhm.
we can share it
Mhm.
and we can access it. I look at technology as our own printing press,
Right.
right? Like,
Right.
it is
Yes.
the extension of this,
Yes.
and it's happening
Yes. Yes.
regardless.
If we like it or not.
It
Yes.
is. We're moving in this direction. There is
Mhm.
singularity
Mhm.
that is coming around. This is where AI, all of this information is running up and meeting in the middle with humanity,
Yeah.
okay? It is destined to be where AI is gonna be take on a human-like form, if you will, like the sentient abilities that we have. These machines will eventually start to get there. When is that gonna happen? That's for Ray Kurzweil, the futurist, to really
Sure.
discuss, but,
Sure.
like, we're on this path.
Mhm.
So, we have to be engaged and part of the design build process.
Yes, yes. And I'm curious, what could that look like? Like for folks who are listening and they're like, okay, yeah, it's true. It's happening no matter how we feel about it. This technology is being developed. There's lots of folks who are very, very smart in the tech space who are interested and curious and innovating and wanting to make these things. How do we as therapists claim a spot in these conversations? Should the folks who are listening who also have some like tech vision or skills be going out and working to create apps themselves? Should we be emailing companies that we hear are developing a thing to be like, hey, you need to talk to me because I am an expert on this area? How do we insert ourselves?
That's a great
Yeah.
question, and yeah, we can say a lot of, "You should be doing this, this,
Sure.
this." The one thing is companies are always running pilot programs. They're
Hmm.
always running studies
Right.
and research.
Right.
And it's government entities too. So I think that there are ways in which you can offer up your expertise
Hmm.
and be part of the advancement
Right.
of science.
Yes.
So I think there's that.
Yeah.
I think there's a couple of crowdsourcing platforms like Citizen Science. Citizen Science
Yeah.
is a platform where you go and you say, "Okay, I've done this kind of research. I'm adding to this conversation."
Hmm.
Out to the crowd, you put it out to the community at large, and there's feedback and there's engagement and
Hmm.
there's this wonderful community of like-minded individuals who wanna just improve humanity,
Yeah.
and so I think you can do it on a small individual
Yeah.
level all the way up to a massive scale.
Yes.
However you see fit, it's your life, you decide.
Yes. And I think too, something that I notice with therapists sometimes is we tend to undervalue or underestimate our expertise. You know, therapists, certainly the type of folks that I end up attracting, tend to be perfectionistic. We focus more on what we don't know than what we do. We're like, oh, yeah, I've been doing this for 20 years, but, there's this other thing I don't know how to do. Or part of what I'm hearing is own your expertise, right? Own what you know. Own the fact that you've done possibly thousands of hours of clinical work with folks around a certain diagnosis or issue and bring
We have
that to
something
people
to add.
who are making
Yeah.
things that know literally very little to nothing. Because the other thing that I think about is a lot of folks that I see in Money Skills for Therapists and in my audience in general, it's kind of like sometimes you get to that point where you're like, my private practice is full. I've kind of like capped out here, but I feel like I have more to offer. Maybe
Mhm.
those folks should be actually looking to develop technology, like make apps, get into using these tools. Cause I'm thinking like the combination of, I'm going to talk directly to that person, the combination of your expertise and your sense of ethics and your understanding of what doesn't work plus somebody who can develop technology, you can make something incredible that could really positively change people's lives. But if we're not inserting ourselves into these processes, then our expertise is left to the side of the road.
Yes, absolutely, and, it's interesting because when you look at our demographics, we are a group that we're one of the most highly educated, top performing professionals in the
Mhm.
world.
Mhm.
We hold second degrees. We have so many unfair advantages.
Yeah.
Really,
Yeah.
if we're talking from a marketing
Sure.
standpoint,
Sure.
it just I mean, we're highly educated, we're great listeners.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh, our emotional IQ
Yeah.
is, like, through the
Yeah.
roof, and yet we sit there and we're some of the lowest earners
Yes.
in professional service
Mhm.
industries. And we're still questioning whether or not we're good enough.
Yeah.
Like, it is unbelievable to me, and it doesn't sit right
No.
with me
No.
internally. I'm like, "You have so much to give and
Yeah.
share with the world. Go make an app." And who's to say I mean, the reality is I do mostly career coaching, transition coaching, and at this point in my life, I look at if I were to speak to somebody who has been a clinician for 20 years and they're wondering about what's next, the world's your oyster. You can
Mhm.
do anything
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
want. You can imagine and be and develop anything you want because you have skills that are desirable
Yes.
in the marketplace and are
Absolutely.
so
Yes. And I think that's really helpful perspective coming from you because I know your professional history was outside of the therapy industry
mm,
for many, many years. And I think
mm,
when we are inside just one industry for our whole careers, we don't necessarily realize what we have going on as a group of people that other industries do not have going on. And this is what I'm noticing as some of my students and peers step into, say, like business space and talk about the impacts of trauma, and they're like blowing everybody's minds at that table. Like all these
um,
highly successful people look like they have their whole life figured out are just like completely baffled and like amazed by the information that's being shared with them, which is information that for that clinician is like something they talk about literally every day, multiple times a day. It's just like, obviously everybody knows this, but anyways, but they don't. So yeah, I
yeah.
think that especially coming from you, that is a good affirmation for folks listening. You know so much more than you think you do, and you have so many more skills than you think you
You have
have.
so much to offer the world. And I challenge you all to think about what's holding you back
Mm,
from making that impact or whatever. Now, I also tend to think on grand scale, okay? So, the work that we do is so personal, and not everybody wants to be out there making an app. Not everybody wants to be the advocate and the promoter or to serve thousands of people. The intimate detail about being knee to knee with somebody or screen to screen with somebody is magical, and it's a gift, and it's humbling. And I am so appreciative of that. And I know that if I can make a difference in one life, I feel really honored and part of that, a greater piece. So I guess what I'm trying to stress is it's figuring out your North Star and aiming towards that, and you have all the skills and all the tools within you and now outside of you to access to do whatever you desire to do and to change the world and make it a better place. So I think if I could leave with that would be it.
yeah. Yeah. Beautiful takeaway. Amity, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. This was a very inspiring wrap up to a conversation about tech and therapy. For folks who are interested in learning more about you, learning how to work with you, where can they find you and follow you?
Oh, please, please, please come find me at Clinical Career Collective. I created a professional development company for us to tech up and care wide, get out into the world. And I run an e-course that is called Do This First, where you learn over the course of 7 days all about the nuts and bolts and the foundations of business. And then I throw in and I sprinkle in a bunch of this new technology that's coming online for
Great.
you.
Wonderful. Okay, so we'll put the link to that in the show notes. And thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today, Amity.
Thank you for having me. Great conversation.
I so appreciated Amity's optimism and also realism that this tech is happening whether we like it or not. So the importance of us being at the table. And it does bring me back to something that I often come back to when it comes to all of these facets of business, which is it is about being with, right? Being curious. These tools are out there. Are there tools that could be helpful to you in your practice? Are there technologies that could help your practice? Do things end up hindering instead? How can we use the tools that exist in ethical ways? Not everything is going to be for everyone. And if it's not broken, you don't need to fix it, right? Like if you love taking your notes by hand and you have files in your filing cabinet full of written notes and that works for you, there's no reason to change it. But if you are finding that there are sticking points, problems that can be solved, it gets me thinking about in Money Skills for Group practice owners, we end up talking about systems and doing system audits and talking about the questions of what could be automated, what could be delegated, how do you take certain tasks off your plate so you're able to focus on the areas where you really have an impact. And obviously tech helps hugely with this. It helps us automate. It helps our clients book themselves in online. It helps them change their own appointments so we don't have to have email back and forths. There's AI tools to help you write your notes. There's all of these things, but being curious about what is helpful to you, what aligns with you, what feels good, what doesn't, but not turning a blind eye to what's out there, but really looking at it with wide open eyes and discerning what could be helpful for you in your practice and what do you want to leave to the wayside. But I do also love Amity's call to action that if you do feel called to be part of this technology and be part of these conversations, there's lots of ways that you can do that. And you are probably sitting on a bunch of expertise that would also make a great technological tool that would help to make a great app, right? Or it could be integrated with some of these biofeedback tools, for instance, to really help folks in this world. So also another area there that you can have a bigger impact in the world if that's something that you feel called to. So lots of interesting pieces to chew on from this conversation today. If you're enjoying the podcast, you might also enjoy some of my freebies. If you head over to moneynutsandbolts.com, we have a resources page with lots of free resources. We've got some mini courses, we've got guides for almost anything private practice, finance related that might be challenging you. We have things on mindset and taxes and paychecks, giving yourself a regular salary. So head over to moneynutsandbolts.com and check out the resources tab to grab yourself some beautiful free resources to keep yourself moving on this money journey. You can also follow me on Instagram at Money Nuts and Bolts, and you can watch this episode on YouTube. I keep saying it at the end. I should say it at the beginning, but I'm saying it at the end of this one so you can remember for the next episode. All of our episodes are also on YouTube, so you can always check them out on video if you want to see our facial expressions and if you want to see me drink a bunch of tea, which I always do during podcast recordings and all other hours of the day. You can do that on YouTube. Thank you so much for joining me today.